want to change something about the world. What is it that you wish was different? Maybe you want consent education in your high school. Maybe you want to save the coral reefs from bleaching, end homelessness, cure disease. Whatever the change it is that you want to make, today in roughly 8 minutes, I'm going to tell you how to start making that happen. Now, you might say, come on, Sophie, last year was literally the darkest timeline. And you'd be right. And it can get pretty overwhelming sometimes. But if we let that anxiety and collective paralysis take hold, it's not going to make us feel any better, and it's not going to fix our world. But Sophie, I hear you say, I'm just a young person. Even if I wanted to do something about the whole global warming, rise of extremism, pandemic thing, I couldn't. And sure, some of you can't vote or drive. You probably still have to go to school and university every day. You're likely not the CEO of an organisation or the heir to $1 billion fortune. Well, I have good news for you anyway. Turns out you already have everything you need. Most of the big problems in the world, the really big ones, already have some solutions. Unless you're Stephen Hawking, several very, very smart someones have already put their heads together and come up with a really, really good solution to that problem, that big challenge. They're usually just not being implemented. And the other thing about those big, big challenges is that while they can seem huge, there's normally some level of local solution. And you know who's great at designing and leading local solutions? Locals. We just need to listen. I've been working for a few years with a community in Gidjanjaru country in Halls Creek. And in a town of 600, they had a group of 60 young people wandering the streets every single night, a spate of youth crime that the media compared to worse than a war zone. How do you even begin to tackle that? Well, there's this concept called justice reinvestment. Essentially, it's about taking all those resources that we spend in reacting to crime and using them earlier to respond to the underlying causes of offending, which are normally social. Think of it like this. If you've got a really dangerous cliff and there's a whole lot of cars driving off, do you buy an ambulance to cart bodies away at the bottom, or do you build a fence at the top to stop cars going off? We know that prevention is better than cure. So, using this concept of justice reinvestment, the town of Halls Creek in the Shire started an 18-month-long co-design with 11 different Aboriginal communities to hear directly from the communities themselves about what they were experiencing and what issues and solutions they thought could work to build a better future for their young people. They started a program called Olabud Together, and the Aboriginal Youth Engagement Night Officers program, in its first 2 years of running, has reduced burglaries by 58%. They've reduced stolen cars by 36% and stealing in general by 28%. It's huge results, and it's not your typical response of more police or more prisons. Instead, it took listening to the experts who had built up this concept of justice reinvestment over time, and it took listening to the community, who are the experts on their experience, to find the right solutions. So, the very, very first thing that I want you to take home from this, something that you can do that you already know how to do, is just to listen. When I was at university, I was listening to a friend of mine. She's from a refugee background. And she had been going to the local pool and trying to teach herself to swim. She wasn't having very much progress because she was kind of learning on her own, and she didn't really know anyone else who could swim very well. And also, the lessons were a bit too expensive to pay for on a regular basis. And she was doing this because her and her partner used to love going fishing off the rocks. And whenever they were fishing off the rocks, her partner would freak out a little bit that a big wave was going to come and knock either of them off and that they might drown in the ocean. His fear wasn't really unfounded because 30% of drownings in Australia are from the migrant community. There was a real urgent need for change, especially in a place like Perth, where we live on the river, on the Indian Ocean, we have backyard barbecues by pools. And so I decided I wanted to do something about it. I was part of a refugee rights organisation of uni students at the time, but we didn't have our degrees yet, we didn't have any money, and none of us were even swim teachers. So what were we going to do? Well, we started. The first organising committee was pulled together from that group of refugee rights students. We approached a sports science lecturer who designed the first swimming curriculum. We were able to negotiate with the university to use the pool for free for the first couple of seasons. Then we started to recruit swim teachers from the sports science courses, from the faculties, from the colleges, from all of the huge student pool that we had access to. We spread the word to the community, the refugee and asylum seeker community, through word of mouth, social media, and existing charities. Today, 5 years on, we've taught over 500 people how to swim and engaged 150 volunteers. Thanks, guys. Your community has resources, and you can make use of them right now. All of us belong to a community. It might be where you live, it might be your school, your university, your workplace. It could be that you're part of a sporting organisation or a cultural group. Whatever your community is, wherever they are, whoever they are, I want you to consider how you can harness the resources of that community to build something transformative. Last year, I helped change the law to end imprisonment for unpaid fines. We were locking up in Western Australia over 1,000 people a year for being too poor to pay their fines. It was a dumb law, it was a cruel law. Frankly, it was a fiscally irresponsible law. We spent a huge amount of money on locking these people up. It cost our state a lot. It actually cost the families and those individuals even more. It took a whole lot of collective change and collective action to finally see the law change. I coordinate a coalition of 25 non-for-profits, and we ran a 3-year campaign on this. We put our collective expertise together and we built some alternatives to the current legislation so that there was a different option. We could be doing something different with these people. We got our foot in the door with key decision makers because they couldn't ignore all of us. We managed to do mass emails, letter writing, petitioning. We pulled together a leader from every single political party and fought for our case. A very brave family of a victim of these laws, Miss Du, her very brave family spoke out time and time and time again. They shared their story in the media and before the courts. Another organisation just totally disrupted the system by fundraising and paying off people's fines before they could get sent to prison. The Attorney General came on board and the Department of Justice finally drafted some legislation. And then 10,000 people gathered together in Perth for the Black Lives Matter rally. And the Black Lives Matter rally leaders reiterated the call to end imprisonment for these people for unpaid fines. Finally, in June of 2020, the Parliament of Western Australia made the Fine Default Reform Bill become law. And today, we shouldn't see any person sent to prison simply for the crime of poverty. We are infinitely more powerful when we act together. And when we work together, we are smarter, we are louder, and we are stronger than the sum of our individual parts. We don't have to play, and you don't have to play, every single part in a movement for change. You just have to play your role. So, if you're a cook, invite people around to discuss the issues around your table and a good home-cooked meal. If you're an artist, design the posters, put them all over Instagram. If you're an expert, write that policy paper. If you're a person of lived experience, share your story. And if you're an organizer like me, you connect the people, the places, the dots, the ideas, and you try to bring them together for change. I want you guys to ask yourselves, who are the allies in your community who could join you on your journey for change? If you bring those people together to act collectively, I promise you will see impact. I'm only 26, but in my life and my work so far, I've tried to start by listening and learning about an issue, and then mobilising the people around me who also care, and the community resources that I can access on the ground to start to create change. Probably my first experience of creating change was being pushed in the pram at a protest by my mum. But that seeded for me the idea that I could make a difference. And you can too. I want you to remember these 3 things. The answers are there. Just listen. Your community has resources. Use them. We are far more powerful when we work together. So act collectively. Imagine the power if the 350 people in this room right now all went out and started acting together on that one issue that you care about. Imagine how the world could transform. So, what are you waiting for? Roll up your sleeves. You already have everything you need. Thank you.